Howdy folks, and welcome to Eve Valkyrie Warzone. And just so everybody knows exactly where I'm coming from in today's video, this video is sponsored and approved by CCP Games. And now that we've got all that out of the way, what's all this about, Jingles? Well, in a nutshell, it's about this.
Peggy 12.
Welcome to the Valkyrie. Welcome to a new generation of ships and pilots. Welcome to a battle for our very existence. Welcome to the Warzone.
Hang on a minute, Jingles, is this another one of these fancy virtual reality games that hardly anybody can play because they don't have the equipment for it? Well, yes and no. Well, now you're just being deliberately confusing. I suppose I am. Allow me to explain. First, however, we're going to have to go to deepest, darkest Germany. Sunny Cologne, to be precise, right in the middle of Gamescom week. Well, technically right before Gamescom week, where CCP Games, the developers of EVE Online, we're putting together a demo of EVE Valkyrie Warzone for selected YouTubers and media types. Wait, is that the beard guys? I think it is. Oh, we can't be seen talking to those dirty, filthy console peasants. Well, alright, I did talk to those dirty, filthy console peasants. In fact, I went out for dinner with those dirty, filthy console peasants. Om nom 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 nom. German sausage. Best sausage. Ben, Germans make the best sausage, right? Right. Anyway, that's quite enough of fraternising with the console types. Where are the PCs? Ah, that's much better. Oh, hang on a minute, I'm not seeing much in the way of virtual reality setups on the PCs. What's going on? These guys are playing Valkyrie on regular old PCs with mouse and keyboard. What's going on? I thought EVE Valkyrie was a flagship virtual reality title. Well, it is. But that's kind of the whole point of this demonstration, because as of the 28th of September next month, with the new expansion for EVE Valkyrie, which they're calling Warzone, you're going to be able to play EVE Valkyrie on Oculus, Vive, PlayStation, PlayStation VR, and PC. So if you've been watching videos of people playing EVE Valkyrie on the Oculus Rift and thinking, damn, I wish I could get this on my PlayStation or PC, well, as of next month, you can. Now, I already have EVE Valkyrie, although I haven't had it for long. I got it installed and played on my Oculus VR setup just a couple of days before I flew out to Cologne to have a go at the Warzone expansion. And I do have to say, the sense of immersion when you're playing it in virtual reality is astounding. But being able to play a game in virtual reality is both a blessing and a curse. The sense of immersion is amazing, but there aren't that many other people available for you to play against, because investing in the setup required to actually play a game in virtual reality can be quite expensive, despite the fact that Oculus recently slashed the price of their headset and touch controllers by 50%. It's still a very expensive piece of kit. And if you have a limited pool of players available, then you can have long waiting times to get into games and everything that goes with that. You can't really have multiple game modes because, as games like Armored Warfare discovered the hard way, if people are getting bored of playing the one game mode that you have, and they're spending up to 5 minutes or sometimes longer, depending on various different geographical servers, to actually get into a game, if you go ahead and introduce a new game mode, just to break up the sense of monotony, you can effectively up to double the length of time that it takes for people to get into a game. Because what you have potentially done is just split the pool of available players into two separate queues. So that's where the whole cross-platform and cross-reality thing comes from. This isn't like other games which are available on multiple different platforms. For example, you can play World of Tanks on PC, you can play World of Tanks on console, but the console players play separately from the PC players. Well, that's not the case with EVE Valkyrie Warzone. Oculus players, Vive players, PlayStation players, PlayStation VR players, and PC players are all going to be playing together on the same servers at the same time. So that takes care of one problem that you can have when you're playing VR games, because as of next month's expansion, you're not necessarily going to be playing this as a VR game. The other problem that you can, and often do have with virtual reality games, is that a lot of them rely on the fact that you're playing in VR and with full 3D depth to basically carry the gameplay. And if you take away the virtual reality and the 3D, what you're left with is a pretty mediocre game that probably wouldn't sell very well at all if people weren't riding the "hey, check me out mum, I'm in virtual reality" novelty wave. So the game has to be good, it has to be capable of standing on its own 2 feet and being playable and enjoyable if it didn't have the VR crutch to stand on. And not many, it has to be said, of the current crop of VR games manage to do that. Valkyrie, I do have to say, while it is absolutely breathtaking in virtual reality, in fact one of the quotes that they like to throw around, which I think came from Eurogamer, was that this is one of the games that virtual reality was designed for. And I have to agree with that assessment. But, well, right now I'm not playing it in virtual reality. And you're not watching it in virtual reality because you're watching it on YouTube, on a regular old flat screen 2D PC. And it's not bad, is it? I am. I mean, I'm very, very bad. I should... Full disclosure here. They sat us all down. We were on the other side of the room from the dirty, filthy console peasants on the PlayStation 4s. They sat all of the PC players down on a whole bunch of computers, and there was no tutorial. It was just, okay, off you go, headphones on, there's your mouse, there's your keyboard, team deathmatch. Thanks to the fact that I had actually some experience of playing the game, even if it was on the Oculus Rift, I was aware that you could lock on to targets like that. And you do it on the PC by tapping the middle mouse button when you've got somebody in your crosshairs. Not everybody who was playing on the PC were even aware that you could do that. So it turned into a bit of a seal clubbing fest very, very quickly. It soon became apparent who actually spent some time playing who'd spent some time playing Valkyrie before and who hadn't. Although even that wasn't enough to guarantee a win. There was one guy playing on the PC with us who, in 2 separate occasions, managed to score 24 or more kills and still couldn't get a win. It's just like playing World of Tanks. But anyway, yes. It's an amazing game. I mean, I absolutely terribly suck at it, of course, because, you know, sucking at games is what I do, so you don't have to. But it's fun. It really, really is. There we go. The first defeat of many. Trust me, I never managed to win a game. I mean, look at those scores. You can tell straight away who hasn't played before. I mean, look at this. Here are the post-game scores from my first match. I finished second on my team. Oh, Jingles, you did quite well. No, I really didn't. I only scored 50 points for 1 assist. Most of my team couldn't even do that. And it never really got any better than that. I didn't win a game the entire day, but it didn't really matter because it was fun. So anyway, what's the game all about? Basically, you're a pilot who's been killed in action, but your personality has been saved and downloaded to an AI construct. And so you effectively have unlimited lives. As you've seen from the gameplay footage, every time you get shot down, you only have to endure a 10-second respawn timer before your personality is downloaded into the cockpit of yet another fighter, and off you go, straight back into the battle. The game has 4 different classes of Starfighter available for you to choose from, with multiple different models of Starfighter available within those 4 classes. To begin with, probably the most newbie-friendly class of ship to play is the Assault Ship, or the Starfighter. They're quick, they're manoeuvrable, their primary weapon tends to be something that just fires straight ahead, like a Gatling gun, and their secondary weapon tends to be something that you can lock onto a target and then just fire and forget about, like missiles, for example. Next up, you've got the Heavies, and as the name would suggest, the Heavies are nowhere near as fast or manoeuvrable as the Assault Ships, but they pack one hell of a punch. I'm probably more of a Heavy player, because I just don't really have the reflexes to be able to do well in an assault ship. And I think my favourite of the heavies so far is the Scarab. Now, the Scarab, when you're playing it in VR, although there are controls available on PC and PS4 to mimic this behaviour, but the weapons, which are flak cannons on the Scarab, support head tracking, so you can be flying in one direction and shooting in another just by looking at the target. These flak cannons do have a limited range, however, so you have to get close to the target, and you're in a heavy, and they're not as fast and manoeuvrable as fighters, but the secondary attack on a Scarab is a sort of micro warp jump, which does allow you to get into the thick of the action and do some damage to those pesky starfighters before they get out of range. Next up, you have the support ships, which have a range of abilities, but most notably the ability to either heal their allies or drain the shields of their enemies. Some of the support ships, the Phantom for example, also has the ability to drop electromagnetic pulse mines, which can be a very, very nasty surprise if you fly into one of them accidentally. And finally, we have the Covert Class. Now, at the moment, this is the very latest class of Starfighter to be introduced into the game, and only one of them exists, but it's basically the Klingon bird of prey. It can cloak up. While its weapons are disabled, once it's cloaked, it can drop out of cloak and unleash a devastating volley of fire, and then hopefully it doesn't get EMP'd and it can cloak up and escape once again. Each craft also has an Ultra ability. It's a bit like Overwatch in that respect, where through the course of normal gameplay you charge up your Ultra and then you save it for when it's going to do the most good. You can... how can I put this? When you destroy an enemy fighter, it will drop some salvage, and if you fly over the salvage and pick it up, it greatly boosts the rate at which your Ultra charges. So normally during the course of a match you may only get your Ultra once, but if you do well, get some kills, and collect that salvage, you can activate your Ultra 2 or even 3 times during the course of the match. So once you've picked the class of ship that best supports your playstyle, which is a very polite way of saying if you're a bumbling old duffer like me, jump into the cockpit of a heavy and stay there. Hey, at least I'm honest. Man's got to know his limitations. We come to the various different game modes. Now, as you'd expect in a game of this type, there's more than one way of playing. You've got your standard team deathmatch, you've got capture the flag, you've got domination, you've got assault, attacking, defending. Pretty much what you'd expect of this type of game. So, what's the verdict on Eve Valkyrie? Well, I have to be honest here, it's definitely better in VR. But then again, most things are better in VR, and that's not something that you should hold against Eve Valkyrie Warzone, played on PC or PlayStation 4 without the benefit of a virtual reality headset and controller. It's definitely a good game, and hopefully you can see that for yourself because you're watching it now without the benefit of a 3D virtual reality headset and controller. And while I definitely, without hesitation, am entirely happy to give this game 2 good solid thumbs ups, I do have a couple of reservations. And while they're not huge issues, they are worth mentioning. The first is to do with the radar. You can see the sort of holographic radar display there at the bottom of the screen in the middle. Now, credit where credit's due, this is a dogfighting game, and the radar is an exceptionally good dogfighting tool. It not only shows you, relative to your position in 3D space, the locations of friendly and enemy fighters, but it also displays their heading. And it is a very good dogfighting tool, but it's only really good for dogfighting. The range of the radar is limited to the maximum range of your weapons, which means that if something is outside of your weapons range, friend or enemy, it doesn't appear on your radar. Now that's obviously not an issue if you're engaged in a dogfight, because they are inside your weapons range, you're shooting at them, and so they do appear on your radar, and you can see where they are in relation to you, which way they're heading, and so on and so on and so on. But if you're too far away, there's nothing on your radar, and you can get a little lost, wondering where the hell's the rest of my team. Now that's not such a massive issue unless you're playing a support ship. Now if you are playing a support ship, you shouldn't really be going too far away from the rest of your teammates in the first place, but, well, the thing about teammates is they have this really annoying habit of getting themselves shot down. So if you're in a dogfight with a whole bunch of enemies and they shoot down all of your teammates and you're in a support ship, it can be very, very useful to know where your nearest friendly fighter is, because that's where you want to be very, very quickly. And if he's not in dogfighting range, your radar is no use whatsoever. Now, to be completely fair to CCP Games, if that radar display was of a sufficient scale to show you the entire battlefield and all of the other ships on your team and all of the other enemy ships that had been spotted at any given time, then the scale would be so big as to be almost useless when you do get into a dogfight, which is when you really need that radar. Now, one solution would be to give you controls over the radar range. So if there's nothing on the radar, you just press whichever button it is that expands the radar range, and then when you do have a target locked on and you're dogfighting, press another button which reduces the radar range. But we're adding more controls to something here, and we're starting to turn the game into a simulator rather than an arcade game. Possibly another option, and I'm just coming up with ideas here, would be to make the radar scale out to its maximum automatically when you do not have a target locked. And when you do have a target locked, perhaps have an intelligent radar that would scale to whatever the range of your locked target is. Maybe that would work better. I'm just throwing suggestions out here, trying to figure out a way to fix what is not a huge problem, but is definitely something that I thought worth mentioning. My second and final issue with Eve Valkyrie, and it's not really that much of an issue at all, but again, I thought it was worth mentioning, is to do with the controls when played on PC using a mouse and keyboard. Again, full disclosure, we weren't given any time to set up the controls to our own preference. It was default control setup, off you go, team deathmatch, have fun. The controls are fully customizable. In fact, when I brought up this issue with the lead game developer of CCP Games, the first question he asked me was, well, what other games do you play? What are you comfortable with? Do you play Elite Dangerous? I said, yeah. Well, we happen to have an Elite Dangerous control setup. And once I'd switched to that, once he'd showed me how to do it, I did find the game a lot more playable. So, as issues go, this really is a very, very minor one. In fact, it's not really much of an issue at all because the controls are fully customizable. But when you start playing Eve Valkyrie on mouse and keyboard on PC, obviously it's not an issue on the PS4 because all PS4s use the same controller. But if you were like me, on PC, you're not entirely comfortable with the default controls, don't worry, they're fully customizable. Go into settings and adjust them to your own preference. And that, in a nutshell, is Eve Valkyrie, or to be more precise, Eve Valkyrie Warzone, the non-virtual reality. Well, even that's not precise because that's the whole point of the Warzone expansion coming out on the 28th of September. Eve Valkyrie is no longer limited to just those people that have PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, or Vive. It's available to everybody with a PC or a PlayStation. Since getting back home from Germany, I have wasted more than a few hours on the Oculus Rift playing this thing in VR, and it is absolutely glorious. I don't think I'm any better playing it in VR than I was in 2D at Cologne in Germany, but it was fun, and that's the main thing. This is a very, very fast, furious, intense, and fun arcade space dogfight simulator. Did I just use the words arcade and simulator in the same sentence? I think I did. Oh, you know what I mean. This is a good game. It really, really is. And that, of course, as I said earlier, is the hallmark of a good VR game. Take away the novelty of playing it in virtual reality with that full sense of depth that you get from 3D, and is it still a good game? Because that novelty wears off pretty damn quickly. This is definitely still a good game. And I have absolutely no hesitation in recommending it to you whether you play on the PS4, the PS4 VR, the PC, the Oculus Rift, or the Vive. 28th of September, mark that one in your diary, because that's when the Warzone expansion, which introduces all of this to non-virtual reality games platforms, is going live. Now, I can't tell you whether or not this game is worth any of your precious money, only you can make that decision, but I can tell you that it's worth my precious money because I have gone out and bought it. As for whether or not it's worth you spending money on, well, you've seen the gameplay, you've seen the game modes, you've seen the various different fighters available for play. You're all big boys and girls, draw your own conclusions, make your own mind up. But I'm definitely giving it a good solid recommendation. And that's it for today. Eve Valkyrie Warzone, available on multiple platforms, August the 28th. Hope you enjoyed today's video, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.